Good morning. My name is Idalis Dominguez, and today we're going to talk about cultural pluralism. I thought of doing a video because this is actually one of the topics that it's much dear to my heart. It's something that I even experienced myself as a student growing up, and I found it most interesting and thought that giving forth my input versus what I've also read in the course would be interesting. Let's first look at assimilation and cultural pluralism. I always remember moving here from Puerto Rico back in 1991. And I remember I moved into Virginia, very close to Washington, D.C., Maryland area. And so in the area I lived in, it was mainly families of FBI agents, military, senators, and representatives. And so moving into that area from Puerto Rico, it was a very huge culture shock for me, coming from the tropics, um, lively music, very bright colors, everyone always kind of happy and dancing and singing, and just a very different world coming into a very um, formal, very rules and routines and procedures part of our nation, in which everything is very military style, very precise, uniformed and everything. And so I remember being 9 years old and learning about assimilation at such a young age. Of course, I didn't know that it was called assimilation. I didn't know what it really meant. I just knew that my mom made it very clear to me, look around you. We're in a new country and we have to look at how people behave and act here. And that is how we need to act and behave because we're coming into their country. And so we don't want to disrupt the order. And as time went by, I learned that that's what we call kind of like the melting pot. So everyone comes from different parts of the world. And when they get put into this hot boiling pot, things kind of melt away and we become one, and we begin to pick up the way of that culture and put away our own. Not always 100%, because I also strictly remember my father saying, when you walk out that front door, you're in America. But when you walk into this front door, you're in Puerto Rico. And so what happened inside of my home was very special, was very unique. There was nothing American about it. Everything was actually very Puerto Rican, very traditional. But the moment I stepped outside of my door, it was all left behind. It was all, now I'm an American out here. And even the way I spoke, even speaking with my parents and my brother outside of the house, we spoke in English because it was polite to those around us that we spoke in the language that they understood, so they didn't think we were talking about them. Even in the way that we dressed, you know? So it was a lot of things that really kind of changed, but it was very clear to me when I walked through my front door, whether it was out or in, I had to change. And so it made in me this idea that it was two different people. It was two me's, right? And it was very hard growing up as a teenager, as a child and a teenager, because you almost grow up with no identity, because then it hits at one point, you want to have friends come over to your house. You want to have sleepovers. You want to have these things. And so outside at school, I was an American, just like them. I spoke like them. I dressed like them. I acted like them. But the moment they walked into my house, the few times that they were allowed to come to my house, because it's very different in a Hispanic home. You know, we don't do sleepovers, we don't do things like that. So the few times that my friends got to come over, and all of a sudden, they want to go up to your bedroom to watch TV or to listen to the radio and have a little bit of privacy. There's no such thing as privacy in a Hispanic home. And so you explaining to them that, no, you have to stay in the living room. We can't go upstairs. Nobody goes up to the bedrooms. And so then all of a sudden your friends start looking at you like you're different. Like, why? What's wrong with you? And, why are things like that? And so then that's when you realize I'm not as American as I thought I was. And then when you get to travel to your home country and all of a sudden you're Spanish you realize that it's not a Puerto Rican Spanish. It's not a fluent Spanish with the colloquial, words that are used in the country, that you actually speak a very, washed down form of Spanish. And the Puerto Ricans are very clear to let you know that, to remind you that you're not Puerto Rican. You're actually a gringa. And you're like, wait, what? I was born here. I was raised here. How dare you call me a gringa? I'm a Puerto Rican. And they're like, no, you may have been born here, but you're not a Puerto Rican anymore. You're an American now. And so then you grow up with this mindset that you're not Puerto Rican, you're not an American. Then who are you? And it's really hard because at such a young age, you are having an identity crisis in which you don't know who you are. You're not accepted in any part. You're not accepted. You feel that you're not accepted as an American, because every time you would say, oh yeah, I'm an American, they're like, no, you're a Hispanic American or you're a Puerto Rican and you came to America, but you're not an American. And then you go to Puerto Rico and you're like, well, I'm a Puerto Rican. And they're like, no, you're not. And so you're like, then what am I? Who am I? And then as you continue to grow, you realize that you really don't belong anywhere because your English is not strong enough. It's not perfect like it is for your other American friends. There's gaps in your language. There's still some words you can't even pronounce that you have a very difficult time pronouncing in English. But then you go to your native country and you can't speak Spanish like the people in that country do. And at times you can't even understand what they're saying because of their slang. And so then you realize, who am I? I don't belong anywhere. I'm not 100% anything anywhere. And so you're dealing with that dilemma at such a young age. And you're also dealing with the gaps in your education system. You're also dealing with not excelling as well as you'd like to. And it's really hard. When it talks about, the family unit and different expectations, wanting to, you're faced with things like you want to please your teachers, but you also want to please your parents. You want to please yourself. And everyone has different expectations for you, and you don't know which ones to do. One of the things that I face as an adult with my nieces is the fact that my nieces, very bright girls, very bright. The schools were always offering them here in America opportunities of special programs that they could be a part of. And their parents wouldn't allow them because their parents' mindset, their parents were first generation immigrants. So their parents were like, that's expensive. We don't have money for that. Or why do my kids need that? They don't need that. They just need to get through school quickly and go to work. And if they were girls, they just need to get married. And even the fact that we still have a lot of machismo in the Hispanic culture, even here in America, in which at times they were even saying, no, they can't go to college because I don't want my daughters making more money than their husbands. So it was really heartbreaking to see doors that were being opened for my nieces that were being slammed shut in their faces by their own parents. And so, finally I was able to kind of break through to them and say, hey, there's nothing wrong with them going to college. There's opportunities out there for them to be able to even do it for free through grants and scholarships. So please don't shut these doors on them without them even trying to go through them at least once and see what's there. And so it gives me a lot of joy to be able to inform that, one of them is a medical assistant in surgeries. And then another one is she's a paralegal in a law firm looking to get her law degree. And another one is studying to be a veterinarian. So it makes me really happy that they were able to break through that, but they did struggle with that. Even in the 2000s, even in the 2000 teens, we didn't think that these things were still happening. They are, because it's cultural. It's a big shock for Hispanic families, the differences, right? Especially very traditional Hispanic families. And so we see that with our students, that sometimes we want to open so many doors for them and we want to be able to to welcome them through it, and just communicating with the parents and breaking through that culture barrier sometimes is very hard. And so what I wanted to say about this is that while assimilation is what we were taught, I truly believe that cultural pluralism should be, instead of a melting pot, it should be a salsa. I love salsa. I love the history of salsa. Salsa came about in New York back in the 20s and 30s. And it was actually in the clubs of New York in which African Americans with their jazz and their blues and Puerto Ricans with their bomba y plena, they came together and they mixed those two very different cultures and music styles, and they came up with what we know today as salsa. And so a lot of people give credit to Puerto Rico, saying that salsa is from Puerto Rico. It's not. It's mainly played in Puerto Rico, but it actually originated in New York. It originated there with the migrants from the 20s and 30s that came together with the African Americans and the whites in New York in the nightclubs, and they became a band and they brought out salsa. And so I truly believe that that's what it should be. We should be a salsa. When you look at a salsa for chips or anything like that, you know, you cut up those ingredients, but we don't liquefy them. We don't put it all together to become one thing. We leave it in chunks. So we can still identify the ingredients, but we realize that when we put all those ingredients together, it brings the delicious, delicious little snack. And I think that's how it should be. All of our differences, whether it be our culture, our ethnicity, our family component, single mom, single dad, you know, stepmom, stepdads, whatever the components are, everyone has something to bring to the table. Everyone has an ingredient that's going to be amazing. Then instead of us trying to just wash it away or just try to liquefy it to make it all together, blend into one thing, like, let's just toss it together and let's see what comes out, because there's a lot that I can learn from my African American, you know, colleagues and students, my Asian students, from my, you know, upper class, lower class students, from my white students, from my single family parents. There's just so much that we can learn from each other. And if we are able to accept one another, if we are able to embrace one another and celebrate our differences, but also what brings us together, I think that that will create such an amazing environment for learning, in which we'll be excited to hear about different things and even curious. And so I just thought I'd give that input on assimilation and cultural pluralism, and how even still today in 2023, at times we're still living it. I would like to end with reporting that due to my experiences, I made sure that my children, when they were born in this country, in a multicultural family, because my husband is from Guatemala and I'm from Puerto Rico, which are two very different countries, even though we both speak Spanish. One is in Central America, the other is in the Caribbean. Very different culture, very different foods, very different language. But I taught my children one thing: your identity is you're Hispanic American, and you're proud of that. And we have a little bit of everything, and we enjoy that. And just like we celebrate, you know, our fun Puerto Rican holidays like Three Kings Day, we also celebrate Oktoberfest, and we also celebrate St. Patrick's Day and Cinco de Mayo and everything else. Because my house, we want to be a salsa, not a melting pot. So I hope that this brought some insight and some help in understanding the difference between assimilation and cultural pluralism, and how we can help our students in the classroom. Thank you.